Tiffany Franklin Wilkerson,
Present.
Judge Thomas Frawley,
Present.
Adolphus Graves,
Present.
Judge David Hedgemanowski,
Here.
Anthony Piero,
I am here.
Kate Rickman,
I'm here.
Russ Reel,
Present.
Danica Rubenstein,
Present.
Corey Solomon,
I'm here.
and Kenneth Tramble.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, I'll turn it over to our administrator, Karen Hart, and the chair of the FACJJ, Joe Vignati, to provide some welcoming remarks.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Administrator.
Oh boy. All right. I apologize. I was having to get some forms witnessed and signed and all of that. You know, it's just part of the process. I apologize for backing out right there at the very beginning. Hello, everyone. It's so good to be with you. Welcome to our first FACJJ meeting of 2021. I think it's of calendar 2021 anyway. It's great to be here, great to be with you. This will, of course, be my last one, but I'm delighted that I've had the time to just to work with you and be with you and see how much this committee has accomplished in its time together. It really has been just phenomenal. So thank you all for being here. And let's see, Joe, what have you got?
Thank you, Administrator. I'm going to take a personal point of privilege as this is also my last meeting, and I'm going to spend a little more time than my usually brief words of encouragement. First, my heartfelt thanks to all of our committee members. I really appreciate the time and energy each of you bring. And while we may never see the impact of our work here, know that your efforts are critically important. They're recognized and appreciated greatly. And I strongly encourage each of you to consider serving for a second term. I'd also like to share my sincere thanks to Administrator Harp and her staff at the office. The dedication and expertise of the entire Ojdp team just never ceases to inspire me. Speaking for the entire advisory committee, we recognize and appreciate each of you for the talents you bring to make the lives of our youth better. As some of you may know, as some of you do know, actually, I lost my father this past year, and today would have been his 80th birthday. So I'm going to share a little wisdom from my pop. When I was younger, much younger, growing up in Augusta, Georgia, my father was the counselor and then later the director of the state-run regional juvenile detention facility. I must have been about 11 years old, and I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. Only that if you did something bad, really bad as a kid, you ended up at the RYDC out on Industrial Highway 56. What I do remember very clearly, and it seemed to happen every month or so, when we would go out for a family dinner or shopping at the mall or going to see a movie, and these teenagers would come around. Teenagers that weren't from our neighborhood, teenagers that weren't from our school or from our church. And sometimes they would kind of stand to the side, stare at my dad, almost nervous, and he would motion for them to come on over. Other times they would run straight up to us, happy, almost giddy, and say, "Hey, Mr. V, hey." And my dad would say, "Are you staying out of trouble?" And there'd be the back and forth. "I'm doing good. How's your grandmother? How are you doing at school? I haven't seen you in a while," meaning at the detention center. "So that's positive. Keep up the good work." Always very brief, always an encouraging smile, always ending with, "Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work." And that's when I began to see my father differently. Here was a man offering encouragement to kids who really needed it. It made an impression, and without me realizing it, it led me on my path. And so, in closing my opening remarks, I would leave to you all the words of my father: keep up the good work.
That's wonderful, Joe. Thank you. Keisha, what's next? I don't have the agenda in front of me. What's up next?
Sure. Up next is our Ojdp updates.
Okay. Well, these will be fairly brief. You know, we put out the request for applications for new FACJJ members, and we got quite a number. I want to say it was in the 30s. Is that right, Cara or Keisha? Was it somewhere in the 30s?
That's correct.
Yeah. And of course, they were wonderful. Everybody, you know, you just want to take everybody. That's when you read them and you read how interested everyone is and the background that they come from. Of course, everyone who applied would have been a terrific participant, a really insightful and wonderful member. But then as we were trying to make our selections and going through and trying to find the right kind of balance of backgrounds and professional expertise and those things, we discovered that a number of people applied who were not SAG members. So we kind of had to fall back and decided to go back and look and double check and make sure that everyone that we had that we're looking at here closely, that everyone was in fact on a SAG. So that kind of delayed us because I was hoping to make a little announcement today, but I'm not going to be able to do that. But I hopefully will get you an email either tomorrow or perhaps over the weekend, but certainly by Tuesday of next week, and you'll get to meet your new FACJJ members. So I think you'll be really happy. I think they come from wonderful backgrounds. I'm delighted that we had so much interest. Let's see. Was there anything else you can think of? That was the big thing.
Yep, that was definitely the big thing. And then just expressing our gratitude to the departing members.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You know, go ahead. If you have something, go ahead.
I'm just going to name this. So Joe Vignati, Corey Haynes, and Melanie Shapiro.
Yeah. Melanie, is Melanie on today? I don't think she is.
No.
Did she join us? Okay. Well, Joe and Corey, I don't know what to say. I hate to see you go, Corey. In your circumstance, I was so disappointed that worked out the way it was. Joe, we're just going to miss you, miss your leadership. I don't know what to say other than this FACJJ has operated unlike any committee I think I've ever participated in, or at least any federal committee that I've ever participated in terms of work product and engagement and not just sitting around talking for the sake of sitting around talking. You all work. You move the ball down the field. It's just been such a privilege to come alongside and try to support you. I hate that we're losing you. Corey, we're going to find a place to plug you in. Trust me. we're not done with you. We're finding a place for you. And Joe, if you're still willing, it might not be on the FACJJ, but there are so many opportunities where we can still tap into your wisdom and your experience with juveniles to help us here at JJ. We'd sure be happy if you'd be willing to continue working with us in some capacity. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm sorry. I'm so scattered. It's been a scattering couple of weeks. And so I'm trying to get everything pulled together and done so that everything is orderly and clean slate, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm just, in my brain, I'm a little scattered right now. Let's see, the next thing on there, did we have any other updates that I've forgotten?
You've hit the major ones. The only other ones are just procedural type things. So one is after we discuss and vote on the recommendations today, then we'll work to get them submitted up to Congress. In terms of the new members, after they're selected over the next few weeks, we'll work on onboarding them. So we may be tapping some of the existing FACJJ members to talk potentially about your experiences and let them know what they're getting into for the next year or two. And then we're looking to plan the next full FACJJ meeting sometime maybe in March or April. We'll send out a doodle poll for that. And that'll be the time where you all work to figure out what the direction is going to be for the work of your subcommittees in the next year.
Great. You guys are obviously in good hands. Keisha and Cara are going to take great care of you. Better care of you than I have, I'm afraid. Trust me, you guys are going to be in great hands. Okay, let's talk about the subcommittees, or let's hear from the subcommittees. Y'all, I just have to tell you, as a group, I just love these recommendations. The thought that went into these, they're comprehensive, they're just great attention to detail, they're thorough, and they're just so helpful to JJ. I can't thank you enough for the work that you put in here. But of course, we have to see if the committee and the whole committee votes on them or accepts them. I'd be surprised if they didn't, but you never know. So let's hear from the subcommittees. Who wants to jump in and go first? Sir Joe, do you want to take care of this, please?
Certainly, Administrator. Why don't we start with our compliance subcommittee and Judge David Himanowski, if he could go through the recommendations of that subcommittee.
Thank you, Joe. I'd be glad to do that. And I will start, as you did, by taking a point of privilege and extending my thanks to, first of all the committee members who worked very hard to get these recommendations together. But as you did, to Administrator Harp, it has been a joy to get to know you and a pleasure to work with you. And we appreciate everything you've done for us to make us effective. And I'm sorry we aren't able to be in DC with you at the moment. These meetings are so much better when we can all be together in person. And of course, to the entire staff at Ojjdp who have seamlessly transitioned us into Zoom calls and telephone conferences, and I guess this isn't Zoom today, but the various platforms we used for these electronic meetings, and kept us just as efficient and effective as always. And of course, my thanks to Joe. I told Joe when his dad passed earlier this year, I lost my dad just about a year before. He was also just shy of being 80. And like Joe's dad, my dad worked with kids. He was a middle school principal in Buffalo, New York. And we had very similar experiences where we would be out in public and kids would come up, or adults would come up as my dad got later in his career and say, Mr. H, hey, how you doing? And, want to tell him how they had succeeded or how they perhaps had moved beyond problems that they had. Right? And now that I'm working in the juvenile justice field, boy, there's nothing better when that sort of thing happens. When you're out in a community, particularly living in a small community as I do, and someone approaches you at a grocery store or at a movie theater or wherever it may be, wanting to tell you the exciting things that are happening with them. So I think Joe and I had similar experiences in that. Joe, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I cannot imagine that this committee could have possibly been run any more smoothly than it has over the last few years. So thank you for that. We have two recommendations for the full board today. One relates to the decision trees, which you've seen and which we've circulated. And just a recommendation that those now be adopted, that they be circulated to the states for use in assisting states in compliance in those areas. And secondly, that as to the VCO exemption, that we should draft, and our committee will work on this in the coming months, that we should draft a standard form judgment entry, court order, decision, whatever each state may call it, that can be crafted to the local level to make sure that judges or judicial officials are hitting all of the findings they need to make when a VCO is used, and more importantly, to make sure that they are using the VCO correctly and not overusing it or using it in circumstances where it should not be used. So those are the two subcommittee recommendations that are before us today.
Thank you so much, Judge. I really appreciate the hard work that you and your committee have endeavored to create these recommendations for us. I'm going to allow for any discussion among the full committee at this point. Are there any questions for the judge in the subcommittee or any comments? Okay, hearing none, then I will go ahead and take a recommendation for the approval of these recommendations as related to the compliance subcommittee.
This is Adolphus, and I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendations offered from the compliance with JJRA subcommittee offered by Judge Hermanowski.
Thank you, Adolphus. Do we have a second?
This is Tom Frawley. I'll second that.
Thank you, Judge Frawley. All right. Well, then, now that we have both a proposal and a second, let's vote. All in favor of adopting these recommendations from the compliance subcommittee respond in the affirmative. Aye.
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 Do we have any nay votes? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Territories Outreach Subcommittee. Anthony Piero is our chair. And Anthony, if you could educate us on these recommendations.
I will. Thank you, Joe. And I'm going to start the way Judge started. And Joe, I want to thank you for your leadership. I think, you know, when I came on, I was new to the FACJJ, obviously, and I'm going to thank Karen for involving me in this work, which has been just some of the most rewarding 2 years of my career. But your leadership is something that I have tried to example because you have always been that person, and you've reached out to me personally, and I can't tell you how much at times that continued to motivate me to be as thorough as you are, to be the leader that you are, and quite honestly, to have half the experience that you have in these areas. So I want to thank you for your leadership. You know, quite honestly, the actions of all of us reflect you and the type of person you are, and the way that you encourage us to work. So I want to thank you personally for all of your encouragement, for showing us the way that it's done, for being the leader and the person that you are. So I want to thank you for that. Administrator, I can't say enough about thanking you for bringing me on, for allowing me to serve and to be part of this. This work is so rewarding. You know, as Joe and Judge have said, we hope to be changing lives, and we hope to be part of the solution, part of the answer. And actually, we work really hard to do that. And again, it's your leadership. You joined every one of our Territories subcommittee calls, and I can't thank you enough for that. The commitment that you've shown during my 2 years on the FACJJ, and obviously before in your career, it's so encouraging. It's incredible, and I hope that you know that your actions have resulted in this work. I know when we talk about these recommendations, it's because of you and your staff and the commitment that you have shown that have compelled us to work as hard as we have worked to present you with good recommendations and things that we think will make a difference. So I appreciate your leadership, and I thank you for involving me and allowing me to serve in this capacity. I also want to thank the subcommittee members as well as the staff at Ojdp. I'm going to talk about what we did. It was a lot. It was I asked quite a bit of the subcommittee members, and everybody stepped up. Everybody did it. Nobody asked questions. We were reviewing things. We were on calls all hours of the day. We had calls weekly for quite a while. The recommendations, obviously, we wanted to make sure that the territories were involved in the recommendations. So there was some extra effort made to make sure that they've seen these recommendations, and without Keisha and Cara and everybody who participated, and especially the subcommittee members, obviously Adolphus, Tiffany, and Berlina. Without you, none of these recommendations would have come to pass. And again, I just want to thank both Karen and Tanine for being part of every call to make sure that to be there and to show that support, to make sure that the territories saw both of you and knew the support they were getting from OJJDP. So when this work began, we have 5 recommendations. And when the work began, our goal was to connect with the territories, to do as much as we could to work together with the territories, to listen to what they were doing, to break down any barriers that they were experiencing, and again, to encourage them in any way that we could. And it actually was the opposite. The territories ended up encouraging us. Their commitment to listening on the phone calls, being part of them. We reached out to every territory and we conducted listening sessions. And again, I want to thank the staff for orchestrating those, organizing those, and I want to thank every member of a territory who participated in those calls. Each call lasted about an hour and a half. And in the course of the phone call, we heard some perseverance, we heard grit, we heard tenacity, and we heard people that are working really hard for the young people that they serve in their territories. But we also heard about the barriers that they faced. And we also heard about some of the struggles that they had, both being eligible territories and then to be compliant. And obviously, they said things to us that we as a subcommittee really listened to and then discussed on our own afterwards. And talk about inspiring. Talk about people who, despite all challenges, are going above and beyond to make sure that their youth are served. Just an incredible group. I think all of us can learn from their grit and perseverance. And again, I want to thank them for continuing to encouraging us as subcommittee members to get this work done. So in terms of the recommendations, our first recommendation is that OJJDP should be permitted flexibility in determining both eligibility and compliance with the requirements of the JJRA. And as a subcommittee, we discuss this a lot. We certainly understand that as a statute, the JJRA has mandates and it has things that need to be complied with. However, strict compliance with the JJRA at times presents barriers to both eligibility, compliance monitoring, and ultimately participation. And unfortunately, that doesn't benefit the young people in the territories, and it doesn't benefit the territories in the work that they're trying to do to actually serve the youth as required. The goal of the JJRA is to support the local and state efforts to prevent delinquency and improve the juvenile justice system. And unfortunately, the strict compliance doesn't always allow that to happen. It presents hurdles, it presents barriers, and this is despite the great resilience and work of the people in those territories. We have heard incredible stories of success despite the barriers, but what we're seeking and what we're recommending is that Congress permit flexibility to the administrator and to OJJDP in determining eligibility and compliance. We think that would be a really big step in making sure that everyone who is eligible is taking part, everyone who then when we report compliance has the flexibility, taking into account the very unique circumstances with which the territories present. Our second recommendation is that OJP should commit additional funds to OJJDP for staff and support services. I want to take an opportunity to say this. We've said it, each of us in our own way. The staff at OJJDP is some of the most knowledgeable staff that I have ever worked with in the field of juvenile justice. They are incredible. They are committed. They are professional. They get it. They understand the work. And when we were having our listening sessions, there was not one territory who didn't single out their program manager and staff at OJJDP to thank them for the work that they've done to work with the territory in getting through some of the many hurdles that they face. However, what was apparent is that there's more and additional staff and services that are needed to really, truly connect with the territories and do the work that's necessary. Some of the territories present with great challenges. And to actually overcome those challenges and to make them eligible and participating and compliant, it's really going to take a lot of work. And that staff needs to be there. That resource needs to be there so that the administrator can assign that staff to wherever she deems it appropriate so that that work can get done. And when the territories are struggling or when a state is struggling, that it's not, I'll get back to you tomorrow or I'll talk to you in a few days, that person is available and ready to accept those challenges and really tackle some of the things that are happening in the territories. And they're in the recommendations, but we're talking about tragic and unbelievable hurricane damage that was done to both the U.S. Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico. Some of the territories present with such remoteness that it takes several planes to get there. And of course, during COVID and the pandemic, that type of stuff is impossible. But even regular appearances with the territories, because of some of their remoteness, is very unlikely. So the staff, the recommendation of the subcommittee is that additional funds go to OJJDP so the administrator can appropriately distribute those, again, as she sees fit to accomplish these goals as we've recommended. Recommendation 3, 4, and 5 go together, but we've made them distinct because we want to highlight them individually because of their importance. And number 3 is that OJJDP should create enhanced training and technical assistance specifically designed for the territories, identifying and addressing their distinct and unique challenges. One of the things that we've seen and that the territories all discussed is the frequent transition of staff. And that presents for a number of different reasons, but that oftentimes impedes the ability of even getting a state advisory group off the ground, even to organize a state advisory group. And for those longstanding state advisory group members, that can get frustrating, obviously. And then for the new members, they're not always brought up to speed as quickly as they need to be to step into the shoes of the person that left and assist with that transition plan. So the recommendation here is to create that enhanced training and technical assistance, keep those longstanding SAG members invigorated, keep them going, keep them engaged and encouraged, and then getting the newly appointed SAG members up to speed more quickly, making sure that they're prepared, that they have not only peer mentorships, but contacts and relationships. As we all know, a lot of this work is about relationships and helping to make the territories aware of available programs and funding opportunities. That's something we heard quite often, is that because of this transition, because of the inability at times to maintain an active state advisory group, oftentimes the opportunities go by without them being able to truly apply and competitively apply for some of those grant opportunities. The fourth recommendation is that OJJDP create a program designed to support the field of juvenile justice in the territories. What we've seen, and I think COVID has highlighted this, is the limited amount of resources that all of us have, but particularly the territories. And the recommendation here is to continue to prioritize juvenile justice in the field, meaning that it is equally important as any adult criminal justice system or as any other system that exists in the territory. And the more that we prioritize juvenile justice, the more when resources become scarce, those resources aren't taken from juvenile justice to back up other adult systems or other systems possibly being deemed more important than the juvenile justice system. So we want to continue to encourage the prioritizing of juvenile justice, and that includes training political leaders, training juvenile justice professionals, the judiciary, law enforcement, to always remember the importance of juvenile justice. And Joe and Judge, your stories just highlight the importance and the connection that we can make with young people in all different pathways through our lives, and how important that is. And if we wait until they're adults, we might not have that same connection. So we have to continue to demonstrate, and OJJDP is positioned perfectly to be that lead agency, to highlight how important this work is, and to continue to make sure that we prioritize the work. Because unfortunately, a lot of the territories did express, when resources got scarce, some of their ability to do their work was impeded in favor of some other systems that may have needed the resources more so to speak, than the juvenile system. So we want to continue to prioritize the work. And then fifth is to support that OJJDP support conferences focusing on juvenile justice in each territory. And the thought process there was the best way to learn is together. The best way to learn is to look each other in the eyes, to have a cohesive juvenile justice training. And we felt that that was the most productive and beneficial way for territories to learn together, train together, and listen together. And we talked about using possibly some of the allotment through the Title II funding to actually engage in these types of forums, to have these forums. And obviously, OJJDP would participate in whatever way was necessary so that this training was conducted in a way that really encouraged, again, the territories, but highlighted the partnerships, the resources. I think some of my favorite moments on the calls was when the territories listened and realized that the administrator was on the call and actually were just so happy to hear her voice that, wait a minute, the administrator is on the call. And I think it was just the connection that was being made by OJJDP with the territories, and I was happy to be a part of it. So those are the 5 recommendations. I'm thrilled to speak on behalf of the subcommittee and recommend them to you all and to the administrator. And with that, Joe, I'll take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate you and your subcommittee exploring and highlighting these challenges, and not just finding the problems, but actually coming up with solid recommendations to address these challenges. So I'm very appreciative of that. And echoing Anthony, we'll open discussion of these recommendations. And are there any questions for Anthony in the subcommittee as it relates to the 5 recommendations?
So this is Kate Rickman. I have one question, and it really is just more, I think, the lawyer in me. With respect to the first recommendation, would that look like or mean a waiver of certain requirements and establishing a waiver process?
So I think it could, Kate. I think we wanted to be we wanted to give that authority to the administrator and for the administrator to determine what that flexibility looked like, because each territory really presented with some really unique challenges. So I could see it looking that way, but we want to leave that very open to the administrator to make those determinations as the situations arise, and to not just be bound by, I'm sorry, the state advisor group needs to have this makeup and only this makeup versus, you know what, for this territory, because your population is X, maybe it's fewer SAG members or things such as that. But we want to leave that open to the administrator, and we wrote it that way so that the administrator could have that flexibility given to her to make those determinations.
Let me just say that's part of the problem, that the eligibility requirements, the SAG requirements now, they added more even in this new iteration, the JJRA 2018 added even more kind of technical requirements to it. By the time you get a person that meets each and every one, someone for all of those seats, you've pretty well exhausted the population of the island. I mean, it's just, there's only so many people, and at some point it just doesn't make sense out there. So that's a real hurdle for folks to overcome. I do want to say to the territories subcommittee, these recommendations reflect so accurately what we heard in those phone calls, and I really appreciate your fidelity to the problems that they identified. They really do, and that's not always easy, and sometimes it's easy to start making our own recommendations, but these really do reflect what we heard in the phone call. So I'm just really grateful to the committee for their work on these. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks, Administrator Harp, and a great question, Kate. Is there any other discussion with the full committee on these recommendations? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move. Do we have a motion to accept or approve these recommendations?
This is Danica Rubenstein. I love this. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the recommendations submitted by Anthony Pirro for the Territories Outreach Committee.
Thank you, Danica. Do we have a second?
This is Berlina, I second.
Thank you, Berlina. And I think that's added weight since you are coming from one of our territories. So thank you very much. So we've had a motion and a second. All the full committee members, please indicate your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any members that disagree? Please state nay. And do we have any recusals? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anthony, and to your committee. And
Thank you.
Much appreciated. We're now going to hear the recommendations of the subcommittee for special topics. And Kate Richtman is our chair. Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Joe. Can I just say, I really hate following Anthony. He's always the star of the program, and the work that every other committee is doing is so awesome. And I also want to recognize the work of the Special Topics Committee. Danica, Russ, Corey, Judge Frawley, Kenneth, the entire committee contributed so much to what we are presenting today. But I also don't want to start before I give my personal thanks to Administrator Hart. I had the privilege of getting to know her through another initiative, and have continued to be in awe of not only your ability, Administrator, but your brilliance and your humility. And so I feel like I just want to be in your presence and learn so much every time I am. And thanks to you, Joe. Again, what Anthony said, you lead by example, and you will be so sorely missed. And again, I'm sorry for the loss of your father. I've been there too. And to the Ojdp staff, you make everything we do better and make more sense and be more focused. And there's no way we would have been able to do anything without all of you. So thank you very much. And our recommendations, I think, are really proof that the contributions of everyone in the committee and everyone at OJJDP are critical to moving this work forward. When we had our meetings, the ideas were coming fast and furious, and we were bouncing ideas off of one another. And it struck me as that was happening, that doesn't happen without people trusting that their voice will be heard and respected. And I think that is in large part what OJJDP, Administrator Hart, Joe, and the staff have done. And you've let us feel that energy and that permission. So thank you. Our focus really was to, I think, this time around especially, is to really be focusing on what's the future look like for juvenile justice. And I think we all too often focus on practices of what hasn't been working and what's wrong. And this subcommittee really spent a lot of time looking at what's right. What can we do that could be helpful to showcase programs, concepts, approaches that really can help make a difference in youth. And even to start out with our in the subcommittee report, starting out with the statement that no child should be referred to the juvenile justice system solely because there is no other system that will provide services that are needed, we felt was a very powerful statement. And quite frankly, is in many ways a statement that really reframes how many other systems and many people view the juvenile justice system. And it's a way, we felt it was a way for us to say, we want to work in partnership with other systems, but we also want other systems to understand that we aren't the only way juvenile justice isn't the only way children should receive services. And we feel like we really wanted to highlight, again, practices that would not only make a difference, but really empower youth and families and focus on a number of things that we feel are really important. Healing, and through that, restorative practices and rehabilitative practices. The recommendations come from our experiences and the training done by Danica and Russ at the SRAD conference in the fall really provided a great platform for our future discussions, our discussions as a subcommittee. And these recommendations really focus then on that a multi-system approach or a multi-systemic approach that does a number of things, that combines trauma-informed care, resiliency, and restorative practices. But as part of that, our discussion, one of the things that was an aha moment, I think, for a lot of us, I won't speak for everyone, but certainly for me, was that we haven't really spent time within the juvenile justice world talking about victims and victims services, and raising the importance of victim services up within the juvenile justice system. And so our recommendations, as you can, I can read them out, are focused on all of these things of multi-systemic approach and reframing or refocusing on things that we believe can be successful, while also inserting in people's consciousness the idea of focusing on victims is part of trauma-informed care. It's part of creating a system that people believe in and promote the rule of law, and that young people who are often the victims of juvenile crime themselves can then begin to believe in the system as well. So our recommendations are as follows. First is to collaborate with federal partners, including the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education, to fund and promote school-based, comprehensive, multi-system, holistic programs that address the needs of at-risk youth and children. These programs should include resiliency building, restorative practices in all the components of that approach. The second is, and this is an echo certainly of the Territories Project, is to designate at least one OJJDP staff member as an expert on multi-systemic approaches. And I can't echo the recommendation of the Territories presentation enough to say that that means more funding for them, and we should have put that in as well. Third, offer training and resources to states, tribal authorities, and local areas to help them implement effective multi-systemic approaches that include all of the elements of the programming that we outline in our preface statement. The fourth recommendation is to offer training and resources to state, tribal authorities, and local areas on the victim's rights, the importance of assigning victim witness staff to all levels of juvenile court cases, and the importance of assigning victim witness staff who are specifically trained on the unique aspects of the juvenile justice system. And I can, if people have some questions about that, I can certainly talk more about that. But one of the things that we really wanted to focus, that's one of the areas we also want to spend more time in 2021 exploring what would that look like and what else needs to be done in that area. The fifth recommendation is to increase opportunities for states, tribal authorities, and communities to apply for federal and state grants for the types of approaches that we are focusing on, this multi-systemic approach, and to ensure that that approach is included in applicable solicitations. And the sixth recommendation is to increase grantees' capacity to sustain the effective multi-systemic approach beyond the funding periods. We heard a lot, and I'm sure this will not be a surprise to anyone sitting on FACJJ, that while grant funding is great to get things started, we also need to have the ability to sustain those initiatives after the funding ends. So we want that to be part of any planning and any grant solicitation, grant funding, is to have that embedded in that process so that these great programs don't get created and then just disappear once the grant funding disappears. So that's what I've got, and I'm happy to answer any questions or talk any further about the work our committee has done.
Thanks. Good work, Kate. My thanks to you and your subcommittee. Now we're going to open up the recommendations of the Special Topics Subcommittee to the full committee for discussion. Are there any questions or comments from the full committee?
Just a comment. I wanted to note, Kate talked earlier about following Anthony, and thankfully I did not have to do that this time. But Kate made the comment about the other subcommittee's recommendations, and it struck me as she was presenting her committee's recommendations, how much the other two committees were looking at sort of nuts and bolts things, but how important it was to have a committee looking at the deep philosophical and procedural issues that apply to juvenile justice, the big picture issues, to be making recommendations for that. And Kate was the perfect person to be leading that group. So Kate, thank you to you and your group for really excellent recommendations.
Thank you, Judge. You're very sweet.
Well, we definitely echo Judge Himanowski's comments. Is there any other discussion from the full committee? Okay, hearing none, then we're going to entertain a motion for adopting these recommendations that Kate laid out. Do we have a motion?
Joe, it's Anthony Piero. I love the recommendations, Kate. I think they're phenomenal, and I will so move them for the full committee.
Thank you, Anthony. Do we have a second?
I'll second, happily.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, hearing a motion and a second. Now the full committee will take a vote. Please indicate your approval by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any nays? And any abstentions? Okay, terrific. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate this is all good work. And I'm happy, and I know my dad would be proud as well. I think this takes us to our next steps portion of the agenda. And I know I have some, and I know that Administrator Harp has some. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Administrator. And you, Keisha.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the next steps, as I spoke before, we'll work with you, Joe, to get these finalized and then transmitted on to the next steps. And then, Karen, do you have any next steps or any final words that you want to say in terms of this last meeting and adjourning?
I think we'll just take these recommendations and I think do the exact same thing we did last time, put them together in some type of report and get them to Congress. And of course, I know JJ staff will internalize them here. We'll get you your new FACJJ members. It'll be by Tuesday, certainly, if not sooner. Just kind of depends on what I'm able to get done today and tomorrow. So that should be those next steps. I think that's about it. You'll hear from Keisha about the next meeting, whenever that will be, probably sometime in the spring. And I just have to thank you all so very much for everything you've done. It's just hard to, it sounds like a mutual admiration society around here, I know, and I don't want to be, at some point, I know it might be too much, but I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you. My staff, I'm so grateful that you all appreciate JJ's staff. It's been such a privilege to come alongside and work with them and try to move things forward, advance practice and help kids and do all of that. It's just, I tell everybody that I have here at JJ some of the absolute best people working anywhere in the government. actually working anywhere, period. You'll find them right here in JJ. And that's somewhat of a secret, and I don't plan to tell just everybody, because I don't want people coming over here poaching these folks, because they do such great work for kids and communities and do great work with you, and they've just been a joy and a privilege. And so have each of you on the committee, and I thank you so much for the time I've had with you. All right, if anybody has anything else, or if not, Keisha, I guess you can adjourn. Oh, no, what?
I just had a couple of things. Thank you so much, Administrator Hart.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Really appreciate it. I did note that as we were doing our recommendations, that there were several comments and questions from the general public. And obviously now is not the time to go through some of those, but if we could have staff take a look at those chat logs and where it's appropriate to make response or bring it back before the committee at their next meeting. I'm learning with these new technology to try to keep up, and it would be helpful just so we make sure that folks know that we are here listening and responding to them. The second thing that I would mention as well is that when we had the FACJJ meeting as part of the virtual national conference on juvenile justice, we did state that we were going to make available the PowerPoint on the FACJJ website. So we need to make sure that we figure out a way to make that link active as well. I want to make sure that we follow through, because we did say that we were going to do that. So those are just two quick closing items of business, I think, to take care of.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. We'll definitely get those up on the FACJJ website. We told them we do it. We need to get that handled. Okay. Anybody else? Comments, questions, concerns?
Keep up the good work, everybody.
And sad that we're losing you, Administrator. That's going to be hard but we will persevere, trust us.
You guys, you all, things work better when I'm not here. Trust me, my staff will tell you. Things run better when I'm not involved. So.
There's absolutely no way that is true.
Y'all are going to be, you're going to be great. And you'll continue doing amazing work. That's just who you are. That's my gift. I picked the right people. That's what I did. All right.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm going to miss y'all too. Truly,
Absolutely. Thank you, Administrator Harper. Thank you, Chairman Joe. Thank you to the entire Ojdp team, all the chairs. And it's been a phenomenal experience working with you all again. As it was stated earlier by Judge, I can't wait to hopefully see many of you all again in person soon. Prayers and best wishes to you, and thank you again for your commitment to leadership and dedication towards improved outcome for children and safety for the community at large relative to children and the well-being of children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. With that, we will officially close the meeting. Thanks, everyone, for your preparation and great participation in the meeting. Take care.
Thank you.